Hi there, my name is Jeremy and welcome to my video showcase. Real quickly, I'm going to show you some of the apps that I've made, explain them real briefly. There's many to go through, so I'll try to make this as quick as possible. Here you can see a list of all of the apps that are currently within my account and those that I'm currently co-authoring, which are simply apps that I created, and then I created a customer account so they can control and have access directly to their data, and but I could still be able to help them amend their apps. So first, just a little bit of backstory. I started creating apps while I was a regional director, sales and marketing for a service company in Austin, Texas. I was trying to find an app to provide some services, to provide me some service, and I just could not find what I was looking for. And in that process, I did stumble upon the ability to start creating my own apps, and I jumped in, and I haven't looked back. So here is one of the first apps that I made. It is what we call an app launcher. Essentially, it has multiple apps inside one app, and we do this to create efficiencies rather than having one real huge, robust app. It works a lot faster when you're just using what we call a micro app strategy. So inside there is, of course, the app for me to be able to see charts, for me to be able to see workflow for appointments, for me to be able to do market research, look at territories, separate territories with my staff. Also, again, workflow in reference to tasks and things that need attention. A small little CRM for the franchise owners that I worked with, as well as what originally was the tool that I needed. I call it the cleaning calculator. But the task I was trying to efficientize was gathering the data and then determining pricing, which was, when I first started, it was extremely cumbersome. I went out with a measuring device and a clipboard, and I wrote down the measurements and all the different items in those areas, and I'd go back to the office and I'd crunch on the calculator and do all of the math and pray that I did my math right, and after about 2 hours I would have the pricing. That just wasn't cutting it, because I was cutting into my prospecting and my ability to generate income, because of course not all appointments do end up becoming sales. But I did want to make sure that I was maximizing my time in the day. So I was trying to find something to help me do that faster. I found nothing. I ended up creating it. It doesn't look like much, but it does some serious sophisticated calculations for me. Allows me to add areas, add the photo, name it, list every single item, determine how long it's going to take to clean that facility. That then allows me to be able to determine what the cost is. One interesting thing is one of the very first apps that I made was actually for my friend Jesse, who works for Indeed.com. That's him there. That's the Indeed offices there in Austin, Texas. And he's a project manager. He's since been promoted, but at the time he was a project manager, and he was responsible for ordering all of the items, all of the equipment for all of the offices that they were opening across the world. And he just was having some communication issues, and some of it was reference to time zone, but a lot of it was just there wasn't a system in place for him to kind of track stuff and make sure that find out what the status of things are. And he was constantly having to send emails and waiting for the responses from his staff. So we came up with a solution for his staff to have a mobile access to just instantly change the status on something, and he would be able to keep up to date. Of course, this never fully got implemented, because as soon as Jesse showed this to his supervisor, they were like, "Whoa, wait a minute! Your friend can't make an app for you. We have web developers, and we will help you there." And so they basically emulated the app that I created for him and made him something very similar. But most importantly, he got his problem solved. It hasn't been all business. I've definitely had a lot of fun playing around and making apps. One simple one, I'm a huge fantasy football fan. One of the podcasts I listen to for fantasy football is called The Fantasy Footballers. And on their website one year, they had this really cool quiz that allowed you to answer questions, calculate points, and then based on your answers, it would tell you which of the three podcasts hosts that your opinions are more aligned with. And it was very humor based. Absolutely loved it. And you just went through, automatically moves on after you answer a question, and it calculates the total. And at the end, it has a funny response on who your opinions are like. Pretty easy there. I also made another app for a friend of mine who owns a sports memorabilia store. And one thing that they do, they called break boxes. And basically what they would do is allow a lot of customers to come together to buy these big unopened cases of memorabilia cards. And then they would, via video, live video, open those cases up and show their clients what was inside, and then they would divide up the contents. And they just needed an easy way for people to sign up, know what the price was going to be, and let them know what the status was. So once one group for purchasing that particular box, once it was full, they wanted them to be notified. It was somewhat sophisticated with some of the workflows and notifications, but it wasn't anything too extremely complicated. This next one here was very, very simple. Another thing I like to do is play a Texas Hold'em, and I was playing at this a bar in Austin one night. It was free poker, and what they did is they gave you extra chips when you ordered food. And the person who was running the tournament at the time, he was having to use like a paper and calculate everything to try to determine how many chips these folks were going to get and keep track of it. And I could tell it was cumbersome for him. So I was like, hey, I think I can make an app for that. And I came back the very next day. They had another tournament the next day, and I showed it to him. And now he has something that he can use to track all of the tabs. I don't think that tournament actually is in place anymore. But the next one is another launcher app. And this one I made for a real estate group and my mother, who joined one of these traveling real estate groups that, their intentions are to teach you how to make money in real estate, and they teach you. There's definitely a lot of good education in it. Of course, since she joined, she was able to have another person come to a couple of the seminars, and I listened to them, and I was aiding her. And so there is, something here for. Well, it's another launcher app, so I can move on to this one. We don't have to wait for it to load. Just very simply a way for us to log our lenders that we had at our disposal, be able to contact them very quickly, and then take a look at them logistically on a map. This next one was probably the one that was most beneficial. This was to be able to determine essentially what was the profitability of a particular property at a particular purchase price. And just to give you a quick example, we'll skip by this part. You're just going to put in the deal details. What you think it's going to end up taking as far as costs, and then what is your hard money details, what kind of money you're borrowing at what kind of interest, and then any of your holding costs. All of that information is in there. And then you'd stick in your gap lender information. And once it was all said and done, it would provide you with what your expected profit should be on that particular property. Then this was just a simple data gathering. When I went to the seminar, they were getting all of these attendees' contact information and just having them put it on a piece of paper, which I thought was time consuming and quite cumbersome. So I said, hey, I can make an app for that. This next one was a very simple app that I created for someone who does HR services here. And they handle outsourcing. So they have several different customers. And one of the problems that they were having and they were looking for help with was sending out forms to clients when they made a request for job application forms and personal action notices, background checks. Because she would take the time to customize them for the customer, so it had the customer's information on it and the customer's logo. But that took her some time to be able to do that every single time. And so I basically created an automated way for her to have a list of all of her clients and then a list of all of the forms. And she just very quickly clicks a couple buttons and it automatically sends it to that point of contact's email as a PDF. Then this next one is a very useful tool that I made for property managers of apartment complexes to make requests for vendors. So they would constantly need to have services done in between turnovers. And of course, they want to crunch that time down as much as possible. They may already have someone that's ready to move in, and they want to be able to generate that that rental income right away. So very simply, they're able to open up this app. They can do it at their desktop. They can do it while they're actually in the room doing their walkout checkout. And they just stick in the room number, floor plan, cleaning, carpet, what needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done. Obviously, cleaning always needs to be done. Printing, maybe there was some drywall. I said printing. Priming, excuse me. And then they can attach photos to better inform the vendor on what to expect when they get there. And they simply hit save. And there's my little mascot, Moo. And then you'll see here in a moment that the vendor themselves gets an email so they know that they have a new request at that particular property and they know the details of it and they can go get it taken care of as soon as possible. This next one is an app that I created for the facilities department at the University of Texas. And they have a lot of buildings with lots of different types of areas. And it was just complicated for them to understand the staffing of it. They didn't think they were doing things right, and they asked for some help. So I went ahead and created this so that they would be able to better digest all of the data and the tasks that need to be done. Here's one thing you can see that you have a lot of ability to change these desktops to visually fit however you would like. But it just allows them to identify which tasks are nightly, weekly, monthly, annually, semi-annually, and all the special services. And it's listed out for every single building. You can't see it, but it's a quite sophisticated app in the fact that it's calculating the hours for each area that is necessary for them to clean that facility. And there's just a lot of math. It's just, it's spreadsheet expressions essentially is how a lot of this app creation is functioning. This next app was actually quite fun. This one was something that I made for a service company that was handling for a property manager the inspections of fire alarms and carbon monoxide detectors. And the problem that they had is that the property manager would send the vendor a batch list of addresses. And if you've ever had this issue where you just get a whole bunch of zip codes or a whole bunch of addresses, it's really difficult to figure out any logistical efficiency just based on looking at them. You actually have to be able to map them, and then from there figure out how you're going to then divide them up. And so what I was able to do is take that batch data and create something that was visual, so that way the person that was managing this could get the batch. And let me go ahead and mark this as not completed. And so initially they would get them and they would show as unassigned. And so they would all be read, and then he would be able to go in there and then divide them up by two different ways. One, just by logistics, they could have four different groups, excuse me. And then they could also do it by the day. And this allowed them to more efficiently divide all of this stuff up. And then the whole next level is when they send, you haven't completed all of these inspections yet, and they send you another batch. And so what will happen is the map will now be updated with a whole bunch more red, unassigned inspections to do, and the inspector can go in and then recognize that it's there. Once they change, I'm sure you noticed that, once you change the identifier here, the group, it moves it inside this list. So based on the list and the day, you can actually print this out and take that with you. But of course, this is all accessible from their phone, so really don't need to print anything out, and they can save paper. The next one I want to show you is one of the first apps that I ever monetized or sold was for a surgery center, and they were a large surgery center, and they had multiple surgery rooms, and they needed to log and document the terminal cleaning. So kind of let you understand that, hospitals require obviously a much more thorough type of cleaning. It's terminal cleaning. They're touching every single thing. So it's very, very slow. And when things are very, very slow, they become very, very expensive. And so when you have a lot of surgery rooms and you're not necessarily using all of them every single day, you don't want to pay somebody for the time it takes to clean it if it doesn't need to be done. And to put this lightly, most of the people in this industry are they're at an age where using technology is not something that sometimes they're even capable of, but most of the time they just don't want to. They're used to doing it their way, their paper, their pen, their faxing. That's just the way that they do things. Of course, that's not very efficient and it's quite cumbersome. And so when working with the administrator on putting together a plan for solving their issues, I recognized that one of these issues was the logging of all of these terminal cleans, because one, the cleaner needs to know which rooms to clean, because they don't want to clean rooms unnecessarily because they won't get paid for them. Of course, the hospital doesn't want to, the surgery center doesn't want to pay for cleanings that don't need to be done. And then their accreditation service, most, not all surgery centers are accredited. That means that they're going to be audited and they have to prove that all of these cleanings happen, especially if there ends up being any lawsuits and legal action brought. They need to prove that they provided this safety net. And that, again, was all paper. They had to copy everything and file it. So we were able to transition that process very simply. And these are two apps that work together. They look the same, but they're actually two apps. This one is where the surgery center actually makes the request of which rooms need to be completed, right? They have to sign off on it that they're making the request. And then on this app, this is where, well, let's just do a quick little sample. And then this is the app where the vendor will actually receive the notification for that day, every single day, when they come in that evening, what rooms are requiring service. Then what they're also allowed to do is to go through and confirm that all of those rooms that are listed in that list, all of those rooms have been completed. They have to mark who they are, and they have to sign off and verify. And of course, you can also see that everything is time-stamped. And that, again, is going to satisfy the requirements of the accreditation entity. So pretty straightforward, and of course then that gets logged over here. And this next one is a fairly straightforward app, very similar to the cleaning calculator that I created, my first app. This one was in reference to providing painting and some flooring restoration services, and pretty straightforward. You have a project, a location, you have a status, and then all of the data. Now this data is automatically calculated based on these related rooms, and each one of these rooms is a minor inspection. So you would add on a new room, and you'd fill out this form, and then based on that form, that data ends up getting calculated, and it allows you to get a price on a particular service. But you can be very thorough and exact with this, which allows you, from a vendor's point of view, the ability to give your best price without underbidding and without overbidding, so you have the best chance to win that business for the customer. And as you can see here, I just use a little measuring device, electrical measuring device, or laser measuring device, and then I just stick it in front of the photo, and then I know exactly in that area the dimensions. I can show that to the customer if they have any questions. I always want to make sure that I'm very transparent with the data for the customer, and they can feel confident in the fact that I'm giving them the best and accurate price. And and that's it. Of course, this doesn't fully demonstrate all of the capabilities that you have with AppSheet. There are a lot of things that you can do related to other workflows and notifications and messaging and PDFs being automatically generated and emailed out, connection to calendars and things of that nature. So, I'm totally willing to help anybody with that. And if I don't know about it, I will let you know that I'm going to learn about it. And if I can't do it and I don't think I can learn about it, I'm going to let you know as well. I believe in absolute transparency and honesty and trust. And if I can help you, I will. If I can't, I'll do my best to point you in the right direction. Just to give you a clear understanding of where my capabilities pretty much end in reference to creating apps, is mostly just scripting. I haven't done much scripting. In fact, I've not even really done scripting. I've looked into it, but I haven't done it. But I do know people that if you really need something, you really need a script included in your app and to work with your app, I can point you in the right direction and at least get you costs on that and hopefully solve whatever problem it is that you're trying to solve. Thanks again. My name is Jeramie, and have yourself a wonderful day.